It's the art of the compromise. Will everyone end up satisfied enough, and more importantly, will everybody be in the grid in 2021? The 2020 Formula 1 season is now in full swing after a delayed start to action, delivering a relentless run of races that is keeping the paddock on its toes. But there is an even bigger and more long-term battle also currently being waged. All 10 teams are now entering the end of crunch talks with Formula 1 over the new Concorde Agreement, which will have a huge impact on the sport's future. The Concorde Agreement is, simply put, the commercial terms binding teams to race in Formula 1. Just as the FIA has the sporting and technical regulations to police the on-track action, the Concorde Agreement takes care of matters away from the circuit. Teams must sign up to the Concorde Agreement if they wish to race in F1 and be eligible for the prize money that is distributed to all teams, making up a sizable part of their income. F1's commercial rights holder is Liberty Media, who is presiding over its first Concorde Agreement since taking the sport over from former owner CVC in 2017. Talks would have been previously headed up by Bernie Ecclestone, but that job has now fallen to F1 CEO Chase Carey. Red Bull team boss Christian Horner noted that it had been a different experience to previously this time around with talks. The main difference is that Liberty are trying to make F1 fairer and more sustainable than it has been in the past. The new technical regulations coming in 2022 are a big part of this mission, as is the budget cap of $145 million that will come into force next season. But much of the financial disparity in F1 comes down to the terms of the Concorde Agreement, which has various clauses that benefit some teams more than others, depending on their success in F1 and their historic role within the sport. All 10 teams receive a fixed sum known as Column 1 prize money, shared out equally, before then receiving another sum, Column 2, that is depending on their finishing position in the previous year's Constructors' Championship. This works on a sliding scale, with Mercedes receiving the most money and Williams receiving the least, based on last year's standings. The figure itself varies from year to year as it is tied to F1's own revenues from streams such as TV rights and race hosting fees. The leading teams in the Constructors' Championship, such as Mercedes and Ferrari, also pick up a bonus payment for their success, while Red Bull, McLaren and Williams get an additional payment based on a deal struck for this Concorde Agreement way back in 2012. And then comes Ferrari. Not only does Ferrari get the Constructors' Championship bonus, but it also gets a one-off lump sum that dwarfs any other single payment received by any other team, simply for turning up. This is intended to reflect its long-standing contribution to F1, having been on the grid since F1's very first race back in 1950. The weighting of the payments has been a big battleground in these talks. Many of the smaller teams are looking to reduce the disparity between the haves and the have-nots, hoping a more even share of prize money will make for closer competition on track and help the sport be more sustainable, especially when married up to the incoming budget cap. And the noises have been positive. Williams deputy team boss Claire Williams said the proposals are fantastic for the sport, while McLaren chief Zak Brown hailed it as paving the way for a much healthier F1. But Mercedes has been left far from happy with how talks have gone, hinting at mistreatment for Mercedes and a lack of recognition for its recent success and contribution to F1. "We are the biggest victim in terms of prize fund loss," Wolff said. Ferrari has maintained an advantageous position, with Red Bull it obviously balances out with AlphaTauri, so it's us that are hurt the most. A lot of this not only comes down to the financial terms involved, but also the governance of F1, which is another area the Concorde Agreement addresses. One big sticking point through F1 history has been Ferrari's veto power. The Italian marque has the ability to vote down any F1 rule change should it wish to. Despite early noises from Liberty that it would look to revoke this power, Ferrari is understood to have kept it in place for the upcoming Concorde Agreement, with team boss Mattia Binotto saying last week that Ferrari's role had been recognised. At least someone's happy. F1 is aiming to get rid of the need for unanimity for short-term rule changes, which could leave a single outfit powerless to stop an alliance elsewhere voting through tweaks to the regulations. Wolff went on to put his frustration over where talks stood in more brutal terms a few hours after his initial comments, hitting out at rival team bosses for being up the arse of Liberty in public before privately wishing for some cleaning up on the proposals. Otmar Safnauer, the boss of Racing Point, and a current ally of Mercedes over the brake duct drama, said there still did need to be work done on the Concorde terms, with the team wanting matters addressed in a more governance area but a little bit in the money too. But F1 is not looking to mess around. In response to Wolff's initial comments, the sport put out a rare statement regarding the progress of the Concorde Agreement talks. F1 said it engaged with all teams in a collaborative and constructive way and listens to all their views, and that it would be moving forward with this, warning that it would not be delayed any longer. It was a message to Mercedes and co to get in line and get negotiations finalised. Wolff said F1's message was basically to get everyone acting, and that it had been pretty successful with that. This is because there's a deadline for teams to put pen to paper on the agreement in order to stop talks dragging out for too long. F1 had set an early signed deadline of the 12th of August to encourage a swift resolution to talks, dangling the carrot of a small financial bonus to teams who signed up before this deadline. But it was decided to push this deadline back until the 18th of August due to some legal tweaks that had to be made to the agreement, responding to the concerns aired by a few teams. However, the make or break deadline for the Concorde is the 31st of August. This is the final deadline for teams to sign up and commit to F1's future. Red Bull's Christian Horner said his rivals needed to realise you're never going to get everything you want, but was sure all 10 teams currently racing would sign up eventually. The clock is ticking in F1's current major political battle. By the end of the month, an agreement should be in place that will set out the next era of the sport. It is up to the teams to decide if they want to be part of that or not.